So, from the vibrant shores of Trinidad to the bustling streets of the UK, this gentleman's journey has been as captivating as the roles he has portrayed on our screens. In tonight's conversation with us, he will share the stark realities of his early life in the Caribbean, his bold move to Britain, and his struggle against the pervasive racism of the 1960s and 70s, leading to his continued efforts to promote equality today. As one of the first prominent black actors to break into British television, this man has faced immense challenges, but has also never, as you'll find out, lost his enduring optimism or his distinctive sense of humour. Tonight, we examine his pioneering contributions to British television, highlighting his iconic roles in the controversial sitcom Love Thy Neighbour, and how he has become a national treasure playing Patrick in EastEnders. Through these roles and many others, he has not only entertained millions, but also subtly challenged and reshaped cultural perceptions. You will hear a reflection on a life filled with both adversity and triumph, an exploration of the evolving landscape of race and media, and how all of this is testament to his resilience and warmth of a man who has become a cultural staple in homes around the world. In a career that unbelievably spans over 6 decades, he has and always will walk with dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rudolph Walker CBE.
This is not a rum. Not a white rum. It's sparkling water.
Yes, so he says.
Oh, wow. It's before we go, the gentleman who travelled from Stoke-on-Trent?
Yeah, that's Michael there.
Why?
Because I admire you so much.
Oh, bless you. Thanks. Yes, I'm honoured. Thank you very much.
We have promised you that you'll be first in the queue for the books so that you can get your train, because we know that you're leaving this evening. So, is this your first time to Hertford or not?
I passed through Hertford on many occasions, but this is the first time that I entered a pub for many years. And yeah, if my mother should see me now, God knows what she'd tell me. I'm sitting in a pub in Hertfordshire. No, this is the first time.
Well, you can blame that on me then, can't you? So, we're here to obviously about your wonderful new autobiography. So, how did this book first come about, Rudolph?
Well, call it a labour of love, I don't know. For many years I've been jotting down things on bits of paper, and I never ever thought that I'd be writing my autobiography. I thought people who write books and things like that are the ones who went to Oxford and Cambridge and places like that, not for the likes of me who came from a single parent and left school very early. So there was always that kind of unnecessary, I call it unnecessary now, but inbuilt, what should I say, stigma, or that I had, or I felt that it's not for me. But as years went by, I'm being approached by several people saying that, you know what, you got to write your history. The lion's story is always being told by the hunter, never the lion. And with that in mind, and the advice from, you know, my children, my daughter who is here, and my son, and having grandchildren, I thought it's about time that I leave something so that, you know, for the next generation and generations to come, so that when I'm pushing daisies, no one else would sit and write about me not knowing the true me. And hence the reason why I decided to embark and put pen to paper finally and write my story.
I think everyone here would agree with that, and they're very happy that you have, because I know that there's a few people here tonight who want more than one book, and thankfully there will be enough for you. So the book tells about your early life in Trinidad, and so tell us a bit about how that, obviously people can read it in the book, but just give us a little idea of how that shaped your personality and your interests, because I actually met you through cricket, so
Yes.
I know that's one of them.
Yeah, cricket, yes, is one of my love, one of the games that I played as a youngster in Trinidad. I mean, at the age of about 10, 11, I was the opening bat for my school, and also believe it or not, you talk about pace bowlers from the Caribbean, you know, the great pace bowlers. In fact, I was a spin bowler, and I feel in slips. But the teachers thought, especially the sports master, thought that I had a future in cricket, playing for Trinidad and ultimately going on and represent the West Indies. But that was fun. I enjoyed that tremendously. I enjoyed making runs. I enjoyed getting wickets. But my passion really was for performing arts. As a youngster, at the age of 13, 14, I had my own dramatic group outside of school, and I got all my friends together in the neighborhood and slightly beyond to, you know, get together and let us read poems and perform in front of our parents. And so that was the start of my love for the theater. And as I grew older, I joined the leading dramatic group in Trinidad, the Company of Players. And again, I was one of the young members, you know, and watching all these older guys and actors and actresses performing, and I learned a lot. They were mentors to me. But what was the question again?
I can't remember now. So your early influences. One of the things that comes over very much in the book was that your upbringing was very much matriarchal, and that you had some very strong women in your life during that time.
You see, the thing is, what I was trying to avoid is telling you all about how my mother used to beat me. I used to get a lot of licks. Now, I wasn't a naughty boy, and this is one of the things that's so extraordinary. I look at the people who were around me, the boys who were growing up around me. You know, yes, we had our little gangs, and we had guys who, you know, didn't go to work and didn't school, and they gambled, and I was surrounded by that. But they were also the good guys. But my mother, when we talk about strict, and I mean strict, came from a single parent family. I had two younger sisters. But my mother, and I reflect now and years later and say, what a remarkable job that she did. You know, given the circumstances, given the fact that she, you know, there were many, many days when as a youngster I come home from school and mother wasn't around, and I didn't know where the meal was coming from. But I had neighbors, especially one particular family, playing with their kids after school. She would say, you know, time for you all to come inside, and I would be part of that family. She'd make sure I come in, and I went in and I had a shower, and I sat with the family and had a meal. So although we were poor, it wasn't a word that resonated or in my vocabulary at the time. There was always something to eat, either in the garden or whatever. Apart from my mother, there was my grandmother's, although I only knew my grandmother, you know, as a very young child, 4 or 5, when she passed away. But her sister, this remarkable, very short lady, dark, or what we'd call black, real jet black Trinidadian. But her husband, or late husband, was of Portuguese descent. So her family and her children and grandchildren, they were what we call Trinidad white. But that particular lady, Auntie Ada, was someone who I just adored. And as it turned out, as I grew older and she passed away, I was told that in fact I was the apple of her eye growing up. And all she had to do is to say, forgive me if I call myself Malcolm, because it was Rudolph Malcolm Walker. But growing up, I was known as Malcolm. I didn't know I had a name called Rudolph, Rudolph. And I only discovered that a few years before I traveled to the UK. All she had to say was, Malcolm, why you did that? Didn't have to touch me, didn't have to beat me, just a sternness. And I might burst into tears, give me a hug, go and sit and eat. But she was just beautiful. Then I had an aunt who married to my uncle, and she was real Trinidad white. So could you imagine me as a little black boy going to the shops holding on to her skirt, and occasionally you find the Trinidadians would look, look at her and look at me, and it's to say, no, he can't be yours, he too black, you too white. They wouldn't say it, but you know that. But she was beautiful. She was absolutely beautiful. Then there are two more. One was one from Barbados, a real Bajan. She was huge. Again, a member of the family. She wasn't my real aunt, but there was a warmth in her, and she had no children at all, so she kind of adopted me, as her son, as a foster son, whatever. And there was another aunt who was married to an uncle, and she was abused, physically and mentally abused. But one thing that they all had in common was dignity. Absolute dignity, each and every one of them, regardless of the problems they had, regardless of their background, how well off they were, how poor they were, they all walked with dignity. You notice I didn't mention anything about the men. I don't know why. There were very, very few men in my neighborhood, or I grew up with, that I really admired. They were all, is that you?
It is, and it's supposed to be all. See, I told you one of us was a professional, one of us wasn't.
So he owes us all a drink.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
So the women, these were women who played a very, very important part in my life. And I think, so coming to find a title for this book, Walking with Dignity, is really in homage of those women.
Yeah, I know that was the important reason that the book was named that. And in reading it, that really does come over. So apart from the people that were bringing up, you said that you had this real interest in the stage and performing arts. So who were your heroes in that respect at that time?
Well, they were all, a lot of them were sort of American guys, like Sidney Poitier was a lot older than me at the time, so I saw him as a youngster in film. But there was one remarkable man, and I don't know how many of you in the audience would, if I called the name, would recognize the late Paul Robeson.
Yeah.
How many remember that name? Or wow, quite. So you're old and you're just as old as me. Remarkable. He was probably, and I don't think I've heard a bass baritone voice, anything like that then and now. But beyond that, he was a trailblazer. He was, he spoke several languages. He went to China, traveled the world. At one stage, they took his passport, like Muhammad Ali, only because he visited Russia and China and labeled him as a communist. But he was, before Martin Luther King, he was a trailblazer. He was calling for equality. And he had remarkable stories here with Wales. He spent a lot of time in Wales singing with the Welsh choir And even when they isolated him in America, he was able to sing songs with the Welsh choir. Remarkable man. So if there's a hero, I would say the late Paul Robeson was my hero.
So before you got to become our hero, you decided to leave Trinidad and come here. And did you come here thinking, I'm only going to be an actor, I'm not going to move there and become anything else? Did you have anything that you actually wanted to go to? Did you have a part to go into, or did you just come here thinking, no, I'm going to be an actor and that's it?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Yes, I came here purely to be an actor. It was no, there was no ifs and buts about it. As a young man, I think I was kind of very determined. I mean, even leaving Trinidad, a lot of my friends, I had was serving an apprenticeship at the government printing office as a compositor. And when I first approached my mother, I'm going back just a little bit, when I first approached my mother and said, look, I want to go to England, I want to go abroad, I want to take up the theatre. And her immediate reply was, no, you have a good job, stay here. And if you know my mother, when she say you ain't going, you ain't going. And an actor, Trinidad, an actor turned up in Trinidad, was well known, the late Errol John. And I approached him and he said, look, if you want to further your career in the theatre, if you love it so much, what I would suggest you do, you immigrate to the UK. There's no two ways about it. The best training you can get is in the UK. And as I said, when I approached my mother, she said no. And then suddenly one day she turned up and she said, Malcolm, you have my blessing. Let's see what we can do to raise the money. Didn't tell me the reason why. A few years after, I discovered that she was on a bus coming home one evening and she overheard two parents discussing their children, two boys, and said that, their son wanted to go to America. They didn't allow them, they refused, and they regretted simply because they turned out to be two scamps. They're gambling and drinking, and she decided then there is no way she wanted to hear that story in years to come. So that's how I ended up coming to the UK, purely to further my career in the theatre. I wanted to be an actor. There was not even a question of if I don't succeed, I will get on a boat and go back to the Trinidad. No, that was never my intention. I was a determined young man. The sky was the limit. Not that I wanted to be a celebrity or wanted to be anything big. I didn't see myself at that point in time as where I am today, certainly not. But just to be able to earn a living out of the profession, to be able to play great roles, that was purely my intention and my aim.
And what was the big breakthrough and how long did that take?
You have all night.
Everybody but the guys got to go back to start.
Well, yes, obviously, Love Thy Neighbour was the biggest break, because that gave me became a household name when that started transmitting. But I did a lot of work prior to that, in repertory theatre companies up and down the country, going to places like Birmingham and Malvern and having to, get up in the morning, a cold morning in digs in Birmingham, and you come down for breakfast, and you can smell the breakfast from the digs, the room upstairs. You smell it, because when you arrive, you saw mushroom and eggs and bacon and sausages floating in some black oil. And on top of that, you had baked beans, and the landlady was sweet. Mr. Walker, here you are. Of course, the thing is with going out in digs for television and the theatre, they send you a list of landladies and landlords out in the country. And there wasn't a racial problem whatsoever, because they happened to choose, landladies who are welcoming. But bless them, they don't know anything about West Indians. You know, so when you come down and you are presented with this, and they're smiling and put their arm on your shoulder, and as far as they're concerned, this is a typical English breakfast, and you're going to sit down and enjoy that. And you sit down, brother, and you see mushrooms and everything swimming in black oil. You think, I can't eat that. But you don't want to insult the person, so you start nibbling here and there. And when she turned she back, if you could find a plastic bag, you put it in and you disappear. But they were beautiful, you know, they were great. And so the following morning I said, look, Mom, I'm not a big eater, just toast would do. You know, you're sure, but you're going to be hungry, so can I prepare something for you so that you can take to the studio? No, it's all right, because I don't want lunchtime. I take this thing out, and all my friends around me watching me eating bacon and saltfish and, you know, and swimming in black oil. But no, they were quite happy, you know, just to have the toast. So that was an experience that I had very early on in my career. What was the question?
Well, it was, well, I think you've answered it very well. What it's led me on to is, what do you have for breakfast now? Because I'm guessing you don't have that anymore.
Not that, certainly not that.
Not that.
But no, you know, it varies. It also, number one, it depends on what time I have to leave home and how much time I have left to arrive at the studio. But now I would have a couple of slices of toast, boiled egg or something like that. And if my children are around, if my daughters are around, I am forced to go and get some bacon and sausage, but not swimming in oil. I make sure that they...
I think we need to get him on one of the cooking programs, don't you?
I did that many years ago.
Oh, come on.
No, it was many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a cooking program and I had to do a West Indian soup. And God help them. I mean, I hope that nobody was watching that and took that as a recipe. You know, in fact, was teaching how to cut green bananas, peel green bananas, or green fig, as we call it in Trinidad, and make, you know, with dasheen and yam and things like that. And one day maybe someone will dig up that video. But I'm going back now to the 70s, the early 70s. That's a long time ago. And cooking has come a long way since then. Yeah.
Right, so if anybody wants to find that video on YouTube, please let me know. Please let me know. You mentioned Love Thy Neighbour, and I think that probably was the first time that you came to most people's attention. Now, obviously, now that has become pretty dated in terms of its language. But I was very lucky enough to meet Kate Williams at one of your book launches, and she's a lovely lady. And what's obvious is that you stayed very close, and that you were very close with all of them at the time. Obviously, the late Jack Smethurst and Nina Baden-Semper. And I know that you have also said to me that you wish it could still be on, that you wish you could still see it, because the message, even though the language might not be right, the message actually was. And I was actually reading recently that Don Warrington feels exactly the same way that you do about rising damp. So can you speak a little bit about what it was like being on Love Thy Neighbour, what your relationships were like, and also, I know that they were very protective of you in terms of any racist abuse that you were getting from outside of the cast.
Well, I was, number one, I was kind of fortunate because I didn't get a lot of abuse. I experienced one or two things, one of which I will talk about in a minute. But I am sitting here talking to you and sharing my life because of Love Thy Neighbour. There is no two ways about it. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Love Thy Neighbour. And I am proud to have been part of that. I am also aware that I am riding on the backs of people who went before me. And the reason why I say that, because we also, some people criticize certain sections of society criticize, for instance, the black actors and actresses who roll their eyes, the American actors who roll their eyes back in the 30s and the 20s and 30s. Yes, you wouldn't do it now. The ones who held spears and say, yes man, no sir, yes sir. But you see what? I am riding on their backs. They had to go through what they went through for me to be where I am today. I did Love Thy Neighbor on the backs of actors who went before me. The late Earl Cameron, who lived until he was 103. You know, Carmen Monroe, the late Mona Hammond. Lots of actors and actresses who went before me did things that they wouldn't do a second time, but they had to do it. I did Love Thy Neighbor, and I loved doing it because it was an ensemble. We had fun. We didn't expect when we were given the episodes that it would last that long and it would have that impact. And it wasn't until after, the first transmission of a few episodes, we realized we have something big. No, it was never meant to solve the racial problem. It was for pure entertainment, first of all. But a lot of people and so-called, I say pseudo-intellects, and the ones who want to sit back now and criticize, they miss the point. They miss the point totally. First of all, what it highlighted the stupidity of racism. And the wives were doing that. The wives, the black wife, the English wife was saying, you guys are stupid. But that was never highlighted. It's not even highlighted today when when the students of today talk about watch an episode of Love Thy Neighbor. They don't see that. All they see is we calling each other's names. And blimey, I tell you, there were times when it was funny. Absolutely. I mean, there were situations that even today, when I look at an episode, I roll with laughter. Sometimes because of the stupidity, the ridiculous things that they're claiming.
You've sent me clips on WhatsApp, and I've looked at them and thought, has he really sent me that? But they're hilarious. I mean, the program was brilliant.
Absolutely.
But sadly, we
got to go with the times. But it's are we so far now removed from that sometimes that friendly banter that we have? I still have a circuit of friends, and I'm talking about very, very close friends, that if we record what we say to each other, and it's out there on YouTube, man, we'll be sued left, right, and center by various groups of organization. We will. But it's a togetherness, it's a fondness, it's when someone is saying something that is unpleasant. I can use the same word in 2 or 3 different ways and it will have different meanings. But we've gone so far now that I find that, there's a beautiful lady sitting here with blonde hair, and madam, it could reach the stage where if I describe your blonde hair, you can turn around and say, what is it, politically incorrect or something like that? Is that the phrase? So I got to be careful what I say to you. I have to be very careful what I say to people. And we are coming in a society now, we are scared of saying things because we are going to offend, although it's well-meaning. And this is not to say that we don't have problems. It's not to say that there isn't racism, there isn't, lack of gender equality. Not to say that, but we are reaching the stage now that I find frightening. We're losing our sense of humor, our sense of love, our sense of togetherness. And there must be a message, there must be something that the powers that be can do to bring the people of all color, race, creed together. And the decisions, sometimes it's amongst us, it's between us, but the decisions are up there.
Yeah. I think that's very true, and that's something that I think as well. So I'm very glad that you think that way. So a lot of people here will know you from Love Thy Neighbour, they'll know you from Thin Blue Line, and they'll know you obviously from 23 years as Patrick, or
23 years?
23 years
I
as
went in
Patrick.
for 6 months.
Yeah, it's you forgot to go home, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah. But maybe then they're not so familiar with your stage work, but you've done a lot of fabulous work on stage. So can you tell us a little bit about your stage work? It is in the book, by the way. So when you buy your 5 or 6 copies each, you'll be able to read it and so will your friends and family. But yes, tell us a little bit about your stage work, and also whether you prefer being on screen or on stage, and how they differ.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that first because I remember that. I probably wouldn't remember the question that you asked to start with. When you get to 85, sometimes, your memory play tricks with you. But no, all actors, and I think the majority of actors prefer to work in the theatre than on television and films. I think I say most actors, because it's to get this audience reaction night after night, and sometimes subtly have to change a performance because the audience is reacting a different way. Man, it fills me with a lot of joy and pleasure. Realistically, you need television and films to pay the mortgage and pay the rent. I love television as well, but not as more so in the theatre. But I love television. It's challenging, certainly what we are doing at the moment. And when I say challenging, it is challenging, physically and mentally. But I enjoy it. I just enjoy it. The theatre was really my background. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford, when I came over here in the 60s, I couldn't afford a full-time school, so I went to a place called the City Literary Institute in Holborn. It is still going, and we had in the evenings I would work as a compositor during the day in a wonderful shop in Islington, printers shop in Islington. And in the evenings, I would go to the City Literary Institute. And we were blessed because a lot of the tutors then were guys and ladies who were teaching places like RADA and all the Guildhall and all the top drama schools during the day. So I had the best of both worlds. And then I went out to places like repertory theatre companies, out in the sticks, as I described to you all, Birmingham. And the sad thing is that a lot of my friends refused to go out to the theatres outside of London because they wanted the limelight, they wanted to earn money, they wanted to be on television. But we had a problem then as young black actors, in that you turn up for an audition, and the first thing that the director would say to you, your experience. Well, it cuts both ways. If you're not getting parts, how are you going to be experienced? I didn't go to drama school. So it was a long struggle. Fortunately, I was able to cut my teeth in repertory theatre companies, and then also ending up going to places like the Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company, although I am one of those actors who, when they first approached me, I said, no, I'm not coming to your company. And this was after Love Thy Neighbour. I said, no, unless you can offer me a part, because I wasn't prepared, and this is what I touched on earlier on. I wasn't prepared to turn up at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre Company and hold spares. You cast me in a role, and if I want to do it, I will be there. So you can imagine sitting in front of a board of directors from RSC and this actor, who do you think you are? Sitting there and saying, no, I am not coming. They apologized after, many years later, and I thought I would never work with the RSC again, but many years later, a director who admired my work said, by the hook and the crook, I will get you into RSC, I want you to come and play this, that, and the other which I did. But the theatre really was my love, and if the opportunity should arise in the near future, distant future, of something, it has to be substantial, it has to be something that I want to play, then I will definitely return to the theatre.
So if there's any of you out there with your own theatre, then please let us know about that as well. What are you most proud of, do you think, that you've done? Is it a stage production that's a part that you've played on stage?
Well, there are two, of course, yes, the part that I am most proud of in the theatre, and also on television, I did a play at the Theatre Royal Stratford East called The King of England, and it was based on King Lear. There's so many facets to that play. First of all, I mentioned to you all earlier on that the guy who influenced me to come to the UK instead of going to America was the late Errol John, a fellow Trinidadian. And he was given the part and started rehearsals, went to the press night, and found that he couldn't cope with the demand. He couldn't cope on various levels. So after the 2 or 3 previews, he decided, look, between himself and the director, look, I can't do this. And they rang me and said, look, Rudolph, there is this part. We would love you to take over. I said, pardon? And I asked them to get in touch with Errol John and find out to get his blessing, which he did. And it was one of the most challenging parts that I had to play in the theatre, to the extent that I won one of the best award for the best actor in that period, which was great. That was one of them. And the other thing, I did a series called Black Silk. I don't know how it was on BBC Two. It was about a barrister. The central character was a barrister that I played. And it was given to me by the late Rudy Narayan, a barrister who just fought for equal rights and fought for the recognition of lawyers, a young pupillage within the industry. And that they did 8 1-hour episodes. And yes, those are the 2 parts that I thoroughly enjoyed.
You've just reminded me of something, because next month we have Carl Howman here, and he said, remind Rudolph about Black Silk, because I think he was in it with you.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Right,
which
right.
So he was obviously very proud of that as well. So I think that's another thing that we all need to try and watch. YouTube's great, you can find anything on there. So that Rudolph's career is really detailed in the book, and we've only got a short amount of time here. So I'm going to come on to Patrick Trueman and your character in EastEnders. As you quite rightly said, it's now 23 years. Are you still as happy playing him? It's on. We've got this on video, by the way. So are you as happy playing him now as you've always been, or has it got even better?
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the things about me and my career is that I never accept a job that I am not going to enjoy. And it's something that I tell youngsters when I meet them. It is important, whatever profession you're going into, to make sure you're going into something that you are going to enjoy. So in a strange way, it doesn't become a job per se. It becomes fun. And this is what I have with EastEnders. It's been 23 years of absolute fun. Hard work, because when I tell youngsters, sometimes they pick me up at about 5:45 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I arrive in the studio about 20 past 7, and then I'm on set by 8 o'clock. Now I could be there all day, not finishing until about 7, 8 o'clock. I got to get home, make sure I prepare my lines for the next day, and it might be the same thing. No, that might be 6 days a week, 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 1 day a week. It doesn't matter. But the pressure that you're under. But I arrive in the studio and it's like, what should I say? I don't smoke, I don't drink, but it's like a tonic. I have a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, but there's also, as the cast would point out from time to time, there's a very serious side to Rudy. That once the camera starts rolling and the rehearsal starts, or the filming starts, let us focus on what we are doing. Once the camera stops rolling, man, I am naughty. But I enjoy it. I enjoy what I'm doing. I look forward to going to work every day. And we have built a wonderful family on EastEnders, and I mean a wonderful family, very supportive of each other. And especially in the last couple of years, that to me, it's evident on the screens, because more and more people are now talking about, especially in the last 18 months, the storylines. And if those who watch television, I think in a strange sort of way, it comes out, that camaraderie, you know, it is just wonderful, and I'm enjoying it.
What I can tell you is that before tonight, there's been 2 other events that I have had the honour to be with Rudolph at. One was his official book launch at the Trinidad High Commission, and then his 85th birthday party, which was done on stage at the Broadway Theatre in Catford. And the cast turn up for him. They absolutely loved this man, and I can tell you that in the book, one of the things that we were missing, we had photographs from Rudolph's childhood. We had photographs of him a little bit older, and even some of the stage work that he'd done. But what we were really missing was the pictures from EastEnders, the pictures in the background and in character. So you'll find that a lot of the pictures that are in this book of Rudolph in EastEnders and in character are taken by Diane Parrish, who plays Dee Fox. And she absolutely adores this man. And if you want someone to tell you stories of how naughty he is, she will. Okay, so there's lots about EastEnders in there as well. We've got to wrap it up now. So I want you to quickly tell us, because this is really, really important, about the Rudolph Walker Foundation and how that started, and how you now help youngsters who want to be the next Rudolph Walker.
No, they must be who they want to be. But it all started, you know, the idea of working with youngsters, although there are stories that even when I was in Trinidad, and I told you all, getting youngsters together, and apparently there are things like that I did in Trinidad. But back in the 70s, when I did Love Thy Neighbour, one of the things that was happening in and around London, and it is in a strange way still happening today, youngsters from, you know, Afro-Caribbean children, when after schools they would be at the corner, not being disruptive, but just in little groups and laughing and talking, and they would be stopped by the police. And those were the days when we had the sus law. They were harmless. And I visited one of the schools in Brixton, and I was visiting many schools anyhow during Love Thy Neighbour, but one school I visited in Brixton, the Tulse Hill, 2 schools, the Dick Shepherd School and the Tulse Hill School. And the message that came through is that, you know, Mr. Walker, you know, after school we have this problem, and sometimes we don't know what to do. All you want to do is to talk and you know, congregate and have fun. And I thought, well, growing up in Trinidad with youngsters, we always found things to do. You know, as youngsters, we played cricket, we do. And I then decided, let me go away and think of something. And I came up with this idea of youngsters getting together in little groups of 10 and writing and directing their own 15-minute piece of theater. Pick their own storylines, select a director amongst them, do your rehearsals, but it must be done outside school hours. You know, your lunchtime or after school. And both schools and the youngsters, they embraced that. So they got together, they worked these little pieces. Each school had to submit 3 groups of youngsters. They had more, so the school ended up selecting the 3 best. And on a Sunday, we got one of the schools, it could either be Dick Shepherd or Tulsa School. We invited parents and celebrities to come along, saw their performance, and then awarded them with the best actor, best actress, whatever, the best script. And they loved it. They enjoyed it. They embraced that concept. And you see what it was doing, it was giving them a sense of responsibility, what it's like to work with each other, what it's preparing them for the future. You know, you have to approach, you have to go to an interview. That confidence, that self-confidence that it generates. And as I said, supporting each other in more ways than one, because you get on stage, you had to support each other. And it worked wonders. And we also had an extra bonus in that we were able to get Muhammad Ali, the late Muhammad Ali, to visit the school. So with all that, there was a lot of inspiration. Now the school unfortunately closed and it's now a housing estate. So fast forward to my 70th birthday. Again, I was invited to the Enfield Council with a friend to visit groups of youngsters who were either expelled from school or the point of being expelled from school. Again, we call them problem youngsters and what. And got talking to them, and these are youngsters with, you know, bright. But they chose a different path. We decided to relaunch the inter-school drama competition with schools in Enfield and far afield. We went to Cardiff, Birmingham, Bristol, and again that proved a tremendous success. So it's now grown. It's now, it's almost an annual event, and there are spin-offs like Role Model Awards and Bridging the Gap, and that youngsters get together or meet one of their older relatives, their grandmother or an aunt in the area, and interview them and write a story of their life, just 2 foolscap pages, and submit it, and they're awarded. So that's my way through drama of trying to inspire the next generation and generations to come. It's my way of giving back and hoping that it's working. And so far the reports have been excellent. And it's not for youngsters who necessarily want to go into the theater. We make that absolutely clear. Yes, there are ones who have gone off and have their own film company, their own production company. But you know, the achievement and what they've done, sort of the stories that we get are sort of varied and wide.
But I do have to say that my wife and I, we went to Rudolph's recent birthday celebration, and we had a lot of these youngsters performing on the stage that day, and it really showed how worthwhile this foundation is. So I think you can be really congratulated for the work that you're doing on that. If these people here want to find out a little bit more about the foundation, how can they find out about that?
Well, it's kind of easy. Just Google. I mean, think about Google and the modern day technology is frightening, but it's also, you know, it's helpful. Yes, just Google Rudolph Walker Foundation, and all the information is there on the website, and you'll know a little bit more about me apart from what is in the book. But, you know, again, a lot of it is in the book, but, you know, yes, if you Google, in fact, I mean, a number of years ago, my daughter who is here, I mean, isn't it great? You get to an age where your children can drive you, you sit there in the passenger seat. You know, so my daughter's the one who took me around today to another event. And a few years ago, she said, Dad, have you checked yourself in Google and see what they're saying about you? I said, pardon? I said, what they could be saying about me? And I must admit, when I Googled, I mean, there were lots of things that didn't make sense, but I discovered there are lots of plays that I was in, a lot of radio plays that I did over the many years, and I must admit I forgot all about it. I did that, I did that, I did that. So there's an opportunity for you all. You know, if you really want to know a bit about the foundation, a little bit about me, just Google Rudolph Walker.
I think these guys have got so much to Google and go onto YouTube for now after this. Right, I'm going to shut up now and open up questions to the audience. I love the way you're all clapping that I'm going to shut up. Thank you for that. So, who wants to ask the first question? There we go.
What year did you
Can you bring the microphone?
I'm not professional. What year did you come to England?
I came here in August 1960. I was just gone 20. I celebrated my 21st birthday on September 60. Yeah.
And in Trinidad, did you live in town or did you live in the countryside?
Well, boy, we live. You're from Trinidad?
Grenada.
It's all right. It's just around the corner. In fact,
when you talk afterwards, you'll know whether that's a problem.
No, in fact, we have a lot of Grenadians in Trinidad, and I dare not check my background because who knows? My grandfather could have been Grenadian. But no, it's beautiful. No, I lived not in Port of Spain. I lived in a place called, now if you're a real Trinidadian, you say Sawa. If you want to speak so-called proper, you say San Juan. So, you know, I'm from Sawa, which is just, as you know, just about 4 miles from the town center. And a lot of my relatives lived in Port of Spain, Woodbrook, and also further out in the country.
And one quick one, did you intend to stay in England or did you intend to go back to Trinidad?
No, it was never my intention to go back to Trinidad. Yes, going back, yes, to see the family and all the rest of it. But it's one of those strange things. When I was going on the boat, leaving Trinidad, there were people who I knew I would never see again because they were of that age. And that had a kind of impact on me leaving Trinidad. But there was always that focus in my mind that wherever I go, and it was England, that this is it. This is where, my future lies, and I will see. And I'm just determined to go as far as possible. And it will only have to be in Trinidad. It only have to be in the UK.
No looking back.
No looking back.
So can I just ask, has your mother been to the UK to see you perform?
Yes, she had. Not so much to perform, but I don't think my mother has seen me perform in the theatre in the UK, but she's seen me perform on television because she was alive during the early days of Love Thy Neighbour. And she was fortunate enough that when I did the film of Love Thy Neighbour, it was premiered in Trinidad, and she was treated like a queen. And, it's, yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. I think you said that you do roles that you enjoy. And I just want to know, with the role you played in Love Thy Neighbour, I want to know if you enjoyed that part. I think that drama was on, probably before my time, but I think it was on racial tension. So I want to know if you enjoyed the role that you played.
Yes, That's the straight answer to that. You're asking me that question, you're here today because of that.
No, I'm just asking that question, yeah.
No. I know, I've answered it.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying, and I said this earlier on, and you might have missed that, I am sitting here today because of Love Thy Neighbour.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And one of the things that happened, you know, even during that period, is that, or even after that period, that there were, you know, I was criticized. And I was sometimes, yes, I was criticized. And then but I took the criticism. I took it in the way that I think, with dignity.
Yeah.
Because to me, what was important, what was more important, and I said this earlier on, and forgive me for those who heard it, that what it did is, and you asked that question because you're seeing it now. You weren't around at that time.
I wasn't around and I came later on, so...
No. I meant, did you see I don't know how old you are, how young you are, in the 70s when it was transmitted?
I wasn't around in the 70s, but I heard about the drama.
You heard about it, and the chances are that you might have seen an episode or two. Yeah. But one of the strange things is that, as I was saying earlier on, that you know, people just miss the point, and you know, there are lots of people, yes, a lot of youngsters who we talk about racism and they look at it today and say how appalling it is. Why should he be calling it? It's not politically correct. It was done at a period. It was in the 70s, it's not today. You know, and as I said earlier on, the people rolling their eyes and things like that in the 30s and the 20s. That's of those days. We wouldn't do that now. And I have turned down many parts after Love Thy Neighbour because it wasn't progressive. It wasn't progressing. I did that and I want to move on as a black man. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I can just add something as well. Can you hear me without the microphone? Yeah. If I can just add something as well. If you just look at the audience that are here tonight, and I'm not just saying because he's sitting next to me, but this man has become a national treasure to everyone. This has got nothing to do with colour, it's got nothing to do with race. This man is a national treasure to everybody, and whether they only know him from 23 years of being Patrick in EastEnders, or whether they remember him in other parts. As he said, he's here because of Love Thy Neighbour, which was a language of its time, and should be recognised as such. But it's because of that Rudolph has been able to move on and do the things that he's done now. And the reason that you're all here, and the reason that we've got one gentleman that's come all the way from Stoke-on-Trent to Hertford to see it. So, you know, I think I think we should applaud that.
But also there is, what a beautiful phrase, and I use it sometimes, and sometimes I hear politicians use that phrase, love thy neighbour. Love thy neighbour. Please.
Yeah. And that also goes for Grenada, obviously.
We're going to have a private talk about that. No, I hope to be in Grenada early in the year. I love Grenada. I love Grenada. It's peaceful. It's great. I love Grenada.
If you drunk rum, I'd buy you a rum, but...
No, I don't. No. Give it to me because my children are going to drink it.
and I'm guessing the breakfasts are a little less oily. Gentleman back.
Hello there. For certain reasons, I loved your character in The Thin Blue Line. I thought that was portrayed quite accurately. But the only question I've got is, and I've got to go back to Love Thy Neighbour. Did you have any apprehension about playing that role before any filming or any before you read any of the script or anything like that?
No, well, the way it was done, very good question. The way it was done is that You were sent, I certainly was sent, as many actors, you know, and I must add this, there were a lot of black actors who auditioned for that part, and they sort of dwindled it down, and it ended up with, I'm here. But they would send you a synopsis, they would send you a sort of one scene, and you would read it, and at that point I didn't have a problem, you know, as a black actor, let me tell you something, parts were few and far between. So you're offered something to read. You read it, and you arrive at the casting, you know, the casting then. We call it a cattle market. Because when we arrive in the reception area, you look around and you see all the black actors in the country. And I say actors, describe actors because they were musicians, dancers, singers, all going for an acting role. So we called it a cattle market. Fast forward, you know, they eliminate others and boil down to 2 or 3, and then you have a screen test. Then you have the entire script. When you're cast, you get the entire script. I would like to say that what I did when I was offered the part, I said to the writers and the director at the time, I'll do this as long as he isn't an Uncle Tom. Throughout the series throughout that, because we're only going to do about 6 or 7 episodes to start with. Throughout that, as long as the character I play is not an Uncle Tom. If you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. If you raise your hand, I'm going to raise my hand back. You call me a name, I'm going to call you back a name. And as long as that was respected, as long as we go along those lines, I had no problem whatsoever. And I enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you.
I think it, sorry, but sorry, Henry. One second, but before Henry asks his question, I just wanted to say, for anybody who does remember that we've got a real mixture of age groups in here, and that's great as well. But some of you will not remember the kind of language that was being used, rightly or wrongly, in the 70s. But we had writers like Johnny Spate. And Johnny Spate, who wrote Till Death Us Do Part, those writers, whether it was Love Thy Neighbour or Rising Damp or Till Death Us Do Part, the character that you laughed at was always the bigger. It was always the person, you were laughing at this person's views. True. Now the language was different. You couldn't have that language now, but the message was a good one. And it is a shame, and it's interesting that Don Warrington is now saying exactly the same as you, that he wishes that you could put Rising Damp on again. So really, you know, for those of you that weren't around in the 70s, these programmes were actually necessary and have brought great actors like Rudolph and like Don Warrington forward. Sorry, Henry.
Yeah, Rudolph, don't worry about the critics, right? I can't remember the last time I saw a statue erected in memory of a critic. I just can't remember. But I mean, Shakespeare or Huckleberry Finn, Mark Twain couldn't survive any kind of scrutiny these days, right?
True.
But what really touched me about your talk, and I'm very glad that Rick and Beverly brought you to the club, was the fact about your matriarchs. I grew up with 7 sisters. Jesus, they were tough, right? Right. I mean, and they probably taught me most of everything I know. I just wondered what all the women, the people who made you who you are, would say to the critics.
Oh, what a question. What would they say? They'll probably say, just leave my child alone. You know, they would, I think that's what they would say. The thing is that the people, if I look back, this is an interesting question. What would they say to the critics? They'd probably say, look, I brought my son up the right way. And the choices that he has made, I know he's doing it from the heart. And he stands up for what he believes in. My feeling those would be their words. And they would be, if we are proud of him, then listener man, you should be proud of him too. You know, those are my feeling is that's what they would say. Others would just ignore any of the criticism because they would walk away with dignity. And I hope that encompasses the sort of the response.
I'm going to start off the round of applause. Right, so do we have any more questions? I'm very mindful of... Oh, we do.
Just a short
Okay, just short, because I'm very wary of that man getting his train. So, who's...
I've watched EastEnders forever. My husband doesn't. But obviously you have a script, but you are Patrick, and Yolanda, you've got a wonderful relationship. How much do you bring? Do they tell you you've got to be rum and the music, and can you please do your fingers, because I love it.
Yes, that's something that I introduced with the character, because it's, those days it was a sort of a traditional, I drew my character from guys that I grew up with in Trinidad, and the older folks, the ones who wear a hat and put their money in their hat, and the ones who, man, they do things like that. So that I drew that, I drew the character from that sort of experience. But, we don't have any say as far as the scripts are concerned. There are writers who are paid to go away and create the storylines. And what happens is that after a period of time, they get to know the character that you're playing. So they write for that character. They look for storylines, especially what you've been watching with Yolanda and Patrick recently with abuse, which, powerful storyline, and it's something that is going to continue and play out. And I take my hat off for EastEnders for tackling a subject matter like that. But we have, as actors, we really don't have any say. Sometimes we get a script and we would say, you know what, Patrick wouldn't say that. Patrick probably wouldn't react that way. So can we look at that, and they'll go away and change that for us.
And he's not going to tell you the storylines that are coming up either. I've tried that one.
Fair enough. 23 years EastEnders and what you've done before, is there anything at all that you wish you'd done or you still want to do?
What a question. No, I've got to be very careful that doesn't degenerate into a private question. There are things that I would love to do a play, as I said earlier. I'd love to do a play in the theatre at some stage. There are things that are floating around, and a challenge that I really want. Playing a character that runs the whole gauntlet of emotion.
That you write?
I wouldn't write it. I would love to, but I'm not a writer. But there are people who are looking at that for me. Yes, it's something that I would love to do. I have no other plays to say that I want to get on stage and do Othello or Shakespeare or anything like that. No, I want to move forward and do something really that's powerful, that sends a message out to the world. Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more question, and then we'll go to the book signing. So.
Hi Rudolph.
Hi.
I was wondering what your favourite storyline that you've been involved in EastEnders is.
In a strange sort of way, it's one of well, there are two storylines. The one that I've just been involved in that is still, as far as I know, is still running, and that's the abuse, women abuse, that Yolandi has been through. And the other storyline that which was challenging, but I enjoyed doing it in a strange way, is when Patrick had his stroke, his mini stroke. I did a lot of research on that. It wasn't a case of just getting the script. and you pretend to have a stroke. They warned me. They told me, they called me into the office and said, this is what we are planning. What do I feel? What do I think? And I said, yes, I'd love to do it as long as you're not going to kill him off. So they said, no, that's not the intention. It was going to be a mini stroke. And so I did a lot of research. I went to hospitals. I met people who had strokes. And, there was no age. What was in doing the research and frightening, I met people who, at a very young age had strokes. So what you saw on screen was a combination of a lot of preparation. And which I thoroughly enjoyed, and just pray and hope that it had the right impact. I mean, so much so that, that you bump into people who are not television savvy. They watch it and they love it and they enjoy it. And what are you doing here? But you had a stroke last night. No matter. And that happened a lot, and depending on the areas that I went and people I met, and you're going to say, look, Mama was acting. People still think that I really drink rum. They think I'm a drunkard, a drunkard, and they're looking for money. And I don't wear a hat. Where's your hat?
I've got to tell you this. When the Grand National was on back in April, I was talking to Rudolph, and just to prove that the character is very different from this man you see next to me, I just said to him, have you bet on the Grand National? And he said, no, I don't gamble. Now that's about as far away from Patrick Trueman as you can possibly be. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you could agree that we could talk to this man all evening, but unfortunately we have run out of time. So please put your hands together for the wonderful Mr. Rudolph Walker CBE.
Yeah.